Hey, I'm Henry Stern, your state senator or some of your state senators. Thanks for tuning in today. I am here in the burn scar of the Woolsey fire, a fire that affected a lot of us. Lost my place during that fire, and a lot of people here did too. We're right on the edge of Agoura Hills right now in a little community called Malibu Lake. I actually grew up jumping in that lake and playing around here, and it's a beautiful, very special place to live, but it's also a dangerous place to live. And something we're going to talk about today is how to live with that danger and get past it, and hopefully give you guys some tools to get through this next fire season. As you can see, a lot of homes were lost and some of the burn scar is still here, but one person who did make it through in this community is Debbie Larson. We're going to go meet her and Beth Burnham, who's the North Topanga Fire Safe Council leader, but really been a mentor to many people out in this community. Back in the studio, though, today we have Chief Kevin Johnson with LA County Fire Department, who's a real expert on landscape management and brush issues, as well as our former state fire marshal, Kate Dargan. Fire Marshal Kate is now running the California State Fire Councils, which is an association of fire councils from all over the state of California, helping homeowners and residents make their communities more resilient. So without further ado, let's go take a look. We're on Crags right now, and about half the homes on this street were lost. About 84 families total in this area lost their homes. But Debbie, and we got mountain bikers too. This is all live. This is all real. But Debbie Larson, who's been living here for about 20 years, made it. And I know she didn't really sign up to be live spokesperson, so I don't want to put you on the spot too much today, Debbie. But you work for City of Calabasas, is that right?
Yes, I do.
And you've been living here for how long?
20 years.
For 20 years, gotcha. And you have a couple kids who made it through high school in the area?
Yep, they both went to Agoura High School.
Okay. Jeremy, who's behind the camera, you'll be very happy to know that. They've got some fellow Chargers here. But you watched this fire come through, and you were saying to me earlier, you made the call early to actually evacuate and take off.
Yes.
And you had a couple horses, I know, that went with you, so.
Yes, the horses went first.
Yeah. So, and when that happened, though, and you left, did you think your home would last? Did you think it'd still be here when you left?
I thought it would. I thought we'd be back the next morning. I didn't think it would ever reach this area.
Yeah. And yet the rest of your neighborhood pretty much went down. We're here on the outskirts of your home, and a lot of people like to focus on landscaping. I do want to talk about that amazing oak tree that may have been part of the saving grace of this house. But Beth, you were telling me earlier, don't just start on the outskirts of the home. We really want to start from the inside out. When we think about what makes a community safe, it doesn't even necessarily start up on the mountaintop. It actually starts on the roof of the house and works its way outward. Is that right?
Exactly. We all own our houses, and we can have the most impact on what we do with our home, because we want our homes to survive fires. And if we do the work that Deb did, there's a good chance that you can make it possible for your fire to survive, your house to survive the fire.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to be here and talk about what you can do to harden your house to embers, and also to spend a few moments looking at what you can do with landscaping.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about the civic infrastructure that makes this all work. You deal with the fire department, and that mentorship, it's something that's going to come up today, but it's amazing to just hear that backstory of just neighbors and friends sharing information with each other and helping get through it. And in some ways, it's like that friendship might have been the beginning of saving this home in some strange way. Beth, you want to take us up and show us around?
Sure. So we'll start down here because we can see the roof.
Good.
I was actually here 3 or 4 years ago, I think, Debbie, walking around, looking and talking to you about what you could do to harden your home. Maybe even longer ago than that. It was when you were first starting the fire station. That was in 2014. So 6 years ago. So among the place that we always start when we're doing home ignition zone evaluation, as we like to call it, is actually at the top of the roof. And to start looking at the roof and looking for leaf litter, because to me, the world looks like a campfire. And how do you start a campfire? So embers are lighted with a big piece of wood with small twigs and leaf litter. And so usually a roof is often got leaf litter on it, and we have a big trailer here. That's where the construction trailer.
It's still working, yeah.
And Debbie's roof has absolutely no leaves on it, and indeed, a place where we will talk about is where that one corner is, because that's a place where leaf litter gathers and embers gather. And so that's a
You
place
say that corner, you mean like right by the screen door, under the eave there, that kind of tucked in
up
zone?
in there, in that top zone. So that's a place where lots of materials are meeting each other, where there can be cracks, and where leaf litter can gather, embers can blow in there, and then all of a sudden you get a little fire going, and they can find their way into the structure of the house. And so that's probably the most vulnerable spot on Debbie's roof right here. When I was here 6 years ago, there were gutters on this house. Debbie chose to take them off because they were always filled with weeds and dirty. And indeed, that's what we always see is leaf litter inside gutters. People clean gutters in preparation of rain. We now tell you to clean gutters in preparation for fire.
Right.
And so Debbie solved the problem. She took off the gutters. Another choice is to install a gutter, clean your gutters, and then put a gutter cover on them. The water can flow into the gutter. The leaf litter does not get there. And that's a really important thing that you can do pretty cheaply to protect your home from embers. So, and we can move on up now.
But just take us through, this is one big point. People think fires burn people's houses down from the flames. I heard you say embers a few times right now.
What we're finding is that, yes, the media likes to show us walls of flames burning houses down. Indeed, what we're finding is that well over half the houses that are ignited in a wind-driven wildland fire are ignited by embers, little small pieces of spark. And so that's what we can do something about. I can't tell you how to stop a wall of flames. I can talk about vegetation management around your house and defensible space to help flow the fire around your house. But I can talk a lot about what you can do to harden your home to embers. And so that's what we're talking about here today.
They say you can't start a fire without a spark. But, it's not it's not a joke, though. That is what it takes. And those little things make all the difference. So let's go look at the little things. Take us up here, Deb. I promise we won't stay long. We're not going to eat you out of house and home here. Although we do appreciate we got some iced tea. We got a little bit of iced tea.
So after we've cut down the roof, we come down and we're underneath the eaves. Something here which is characteristic of Debbie's house and many houses is that she has open eaves. Fire department likes to see boxed eaves, and that's because when things burn underneath them, the heat gets caught up underneath that, and they find the houses ignite that way. So we talk about maybe if you don't have stuff that's going to ignite underneath your eaves, you don't actually need to box your eaves. But the most important thing here is the vent. And so this is probably where firemen were finding out that embers ignited homes originally. Was they would go to a house, they would clear it, say it was not on fire, and 3 hours later or the next day, all of a sudden it would erupt in flames. And that was because it was burning literally from the inside out because embers were getting through what code requires, which is 1/4 inch mesh. And so that vent up there has 1/4 inch mesh. And what Debbie did and her husband did was they created, if you use 1/8 inch mesh and cover these vents, you can stop a huge number of the embers that get through. And the embers that are getting through are so small that they don't have enough heat to ignite something on the inside. So Debbie and her husband bought this material at a local hardware store, 1/8 inch mesh. A product that you can buy that we like is also called Quick Mesh. It comes in rolls and you can get it online or in any big box store. And these are all really easy things to do to fix one of the biggest vulnerabilities of your house. And you're going to find vents up in the attic, on the sides of houses up high in big vents that you can cover, and also down often in crawl space vents.
What do you think that cost you, Debbie?
$15,
maybe 25 for the whole house.
Maybe $25 for the whole house.
And an afternoon, and you got to wear gloves because the edges of all of the stuff is really pokey. And so we had an assembly line where we made 18 of them, and we just did them and put them up. And secure them, and real easy, do-it-yourself kind of project.
Did you use student labor on that? Did you put your kids to work?
Of course.
Good. It's very important to do. Put all your, within law. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
And extraordinarily effective. So the next thing that like to talk about is this first 5-foot zone. And so think of a snowstorm of embers hitting the house and falling down. And what becomes critically important is what they land on. And so here, Debbie made the choice long ago, I think this was here when I first came here 6 years ago, to put down these pavers. There's nothing about these pavers that will burn. It's a fabulous solution. So up against her house, she's got wood siding here. She's got pavers. Mm-hmm. It's really easy for her to use a blower and get away any leaf litter that she is on high fire danger days, red flag days.
Right, not a lot's getting caught in between.
There's nothing to burn.
There's nothing to burn.
She'll take these pots and move them away from the house. Mm-hmm. She takes these cushions, put them inside the house, puts these benches that are metal away from the house. And
so you want that furniture really to be mobile, and you want to be able to, if it is up against the house, you want to be able to push it out and go.
Yeah, anything that can burn that's up against the house in this 5-foot zone really should be moved away.
Yep.
And just getting it out there makes all the difference.
So part of your readiness plan then really has to be that furniture check as well as your plant check. If this wasn't potted, though, if this was actually fixed, we'd have a problem, right?
Well, something, I don't believe that every single plant needs to go. Mm-hmm. But I think that the law is coming down that's going to say no vegetation in the first 5 feet.
Right.
I think we're looking at that. And so Debbie does a great job of making sure there's not a lot of dead leaf litter. Mm-hmm. Embers are going to have a hard time lighting a green plant. Mm-hmm. And so the goal is to really minimize those kinds of things. I try not to be the plant Nazi because plants are important, and we live in these environments. Right. We have to have a balance. Yep. So the idea is that to know that it's a red flag day, to have a plan. Mm-hmm. And so we're sort of jumping around a little bit here, Henry, but Ready, Set, Go is a wonderful program that all fire departments have. And part of Ready is all this work that you're doing long before a fire comes through. Set means there's a fire in the area, or it's a red flag day, and be prepared to make that movement to be ready to go. And so everything that we're talking about here is all about ready. And it's sort of interesting. What we're really talking about is going to be described as maintenance. Mm-hmm. If you have a garden, it's about, if you have plant material here, it would be about making sure the leaf litter is removed, making sure there's separation between plants. Because if one plant lights on fire, then the question becomes, well, then what's it going to light on fire?
That's right.
And so if it's an island unto itself, okay, so it lit on fire and it burned itself out. Mm-hmm. It didn't cause more fire. It didn't move a fire. And so that's really how we like to think about landscaping.
One thing leads to another.
It does. Okay. And fire moves across the ground, and it then also moves upward from low. So if the embers lit leaf litter on the ground, caught some small stuff on fire, that fire starts moving and it moves upward into shrubs, which then might be able to lift it up actually into the tree canopy. And then all of a sudden you have fires really moving through. Remember, the wind is howling.
Yes.
And moving the fire. So Debbie did a great job in preparing her house and
getting ready.
Getting ready.
We've got a good clearable space here. We've got movable objects, not fixed stuff right by the house.
And it's also by choice. It's metal.
Right.
It's not wood.
Not wood.
And another thing that she did that's really important to recognize is this is now all repainted wood siding. But before the fire, she recognized that this wood was really deteriorating. And she spent a long time making it so that there were no gaps. Because once again, embers find rotting wood, gaps between the wood, those little edges can easily start burning. And once there's enough ember there and heat, and that wood starts burning, all of a sudden,
so even if it can't make it all the way through, if it's finding a little place to nest, that ember, anything that it can fit into and find a little place to burrow, that's where the fire is going to.
It will find your weakness.
Right.
Indeed, we like to look at what the work we do as rodent protection, because rodents find those same openings to get inside your house.
Yeah.
And so,
well, and in some way too, your landscape management, I'm sure this is pretty low water use too here, right? So you get to knock out a few birds with one stone. You don't have as much watering you necessarily have to do, and maybe save yourself a headache from too much, clearing out of weeds and things like that. Is it a headache to have all this stuff, or do you sleep better at night knowing it's here? It's hard to sleep good at night these days, just given the fires coming back.
I definitely would sleep better in this house as I see it today than how I saw it 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But we're really good about maintaining it. So
it takes effort.
It never stops.
It takes a lot of work.
It just never.
Weekly.
It never stops.
Really? So every week, those chores are there in your head. Like, I got to take care of business on. And what are those big chores in your head?
Just blowing all the leaf litter.
Yep.
There's a lot of
the grass grows in all these planters, and get rid of that flashy grass fuel, but leave the more native plant material here. I was talking to her husband about this oak tree, which we were talking about. Is an incredibly vibrant tree, and then when you look at this side of it, it totally looks intact and fabulous. And yet on the street side of it, it is totally scorched. It was totally burnt by the heat of the fire across the street, and it deflected probably much of the heat.
I was going to say that propane tank made it through.
That's what Debbie said.
Didn't blow up, and you got a big live native oak sitting right in front of it, almost like a shield.
And it probably protected the house to a significant extent.
So not all landscaping is created equal then in that sense. If you've got live fire-resistant native oak, say, nearby that's built to go through this stuff, that's one thing. But you talked about grasses, talked about other kinds of plants that have a lot of dry burning matter with them. I mean, what are the things to be watchful for? Do you like her choices in terms of the landscaping she's chosen here?
The landscaping is growing in, and once again, she had to plant a lot of land. She lost a lot of landscaping, and it is. I'm fine with it. It's far enough away from the house. It's isolated. It's a little patch right here. It's an island here. There's stone here, and then down there there's more separation.
So it's not all or nothing then in your mind. It's not about just completely moonscaping your property.
No, please no.
It's really focusing on that 0 to 5 feet.
So for the embers, focus on the 0 to 5. But for the fire, the flow of the fire itself, that entirety of defensible space is incredibly important. So that first zone is 30 feet from the house, and that's a really critical zone. And then out the next 100 feet would be a more natural, less manicured, still perhaps irrigated. And then the next 200 feet would be your most natural zone. But it all needs to be viewed as defensible space. It's really, really critical for the fire department.
And I know we're going to talk in a second to Chief Johnson about some of the larger brush issues that we face out here in the WUI, otherwise known as the wildland-urban interface. But today, this home, we're sort of focused on the home and we're moving outwards. Are there any other things you want to highlight here? We talked a little bit about vents and eaves. We talked about this 0 to 5 feet and maintaining that clearance. We talked about those little patchy zones or the cracks here where embers like to find their way in. Any other big,
No, I think that we've hit
big items?
big things.
Well, so why don't we, just for while we've got this expertise on the line here, let's go back to our studio for a second and check in with our fire marshal. Fire Marshal Harden, I know you're now in your fire safe council role, but you were overseeing the state's fire safety statewide for many years. What have you learned through that experience, and how are you applying that experience as our state fire marshal now in the context of setting up these fire safe councils all around California?
Thank you, Senator. And are we ready? Good. Thank you, Senator. And you know what I learned in my time as the state fire marshal was that, like you spoke about at the beginning of this session, it is the little things. It is how our buildings are built. It is how we are landscaped. It is what homeowners are doing. So when I retired from the fire service, I chose to dedicate myself to continuing wildfire prevention and mitigation, for which you're a great champion. Thank you. And I just want to go back. It was all those little things that we needed to talk to homeowners about. So, you know, in California, if you can think about it, there are at least 5 million homes where we need to have this kind of driveway conversation with the homeowners. We need to explain to them that it is the small things about the gutters. It is the caulking in the building cracks. It is the constant maintenance that it takes to be able to live in a natural environment and stay fire safe. It does take that kind of effort. So we need a cavalry of experts, but also at the volunteer level, who can walk up those driveways and have these conversations with homeowners. And that's about creating community collaboration, creating coalitions, creating the right educational materials, and really just being able to engage directly at a community level between homeowners, businesses, elected officials, and the fire departments, and everybody that it takes to create a fire safe community.
And Fire Marshal Kate, just wondering, how many fire safe councils are in the state of California right now?
So there are over 200 fire safe councils that call themselves as such. And then there are many more small fire-wise neighborhoods that form very small groups. They may not choose to organize as officially as a fire safe council. So there are literally hundreds and hundreds of these small grassroots organizations around the state. Some are large and they're formed at the county level, and some are just like Beth's, the one, you know, your speaker today, and the Topanga Fire Safe Council, which is really just a small area within a community.
And we're going to talk a little bit later about how to set one of these up, but in Southern California, would you say we've got them in every single community, or are we missing that sort of civic infrastructure in a lot of communities that may be threatened from wildfire and they don't realize it?
Yeah, no, we have a lot of room to grow. There is still a lot of need out there. I would say we're just beginning to scratch the surface. Like I said, there's 5 million residents where we need to walk up driveways and have these very detailed conversations where we point to the place, we talk to homeowners about what they can do that's reasonably affordable, and even some of the more expensive things as they change out their roofs or change landscaping over time. And so we need 1,000 of these everywhere or more, and we need them to, you know, have good community structure to them where they're connected with county and city jurisdictions, but also, you know, local volunteer groups.
What do you find is the biggest impediment, like for having that conversation you need to have, for that relationship that Beth and Deb built that saved her home essentially? What is the resistance from your average resident or homeowner? They just think it won't happen to me. They don't want someone on their property. What is it?
I think the largest, there's two things from a homeowner perspective that tend to be the first the first obstacles that we communicate about, and that is well, fire happens somewhere else, but not in my community. I really think Californians are beginning to wake up to the fact that it is in their community. They're seeing things they've never seen before. So I think that barrier is starting to go down. But the other barrier then starts to come up, and that is, it's overwhelming. I mean, what can I really do that will help me stay safe? It's a big project. I have to change my whole house. I have to move. There's, it seems overwhelming and daunting. And that's why these conversations are necessary, because so much of what makes a house survivable is really about these small things that we do to protect it that are within a homeowner's reach.
And so, I mean, we talked about them, Deb spending $25 at her local Home Depot or her small hardware store. Would you say even for the middle class working family, these home hardening tools are within reach financially?
I would say there's probably a couple layers to this, because, science, our research in science shows that what type of roof you have makes a difference. What kind of landscaping, to pull out your vegetation 5 feet away from your house and put in the pavers does cost some money. If you're going to change out windows, that's more expensive, of course. All of those things keep increasing your house's level. But to give your house a reasonably good shot with a 5-foot clean and green zone around the structure, clean gutters, being able to have good home maintenance, taking care of the vents, those are well within reach of almost every home. And there are many assistance programs. The Fire Safe Council, both at the state level and the federal level, are trying to work up programs to do homeowner assistance specifically for these things.
Good. Gotcha. And so fire science, you talked about that. I mean, you've spent your career studying the way fires move. And we've heard a lot of discussion about big trees and trees exploding, and a lot of focus on these walls of flames coming through giant forest fires. But we're in an area where there's a live oak tree, but I don't see giant sequoias and redwoods, and it doesn't look like the north coast of California here, down in Southern California. This is a lot of chaparral. This is a lot of shrubland and native grasses and then invasive grasses too. So do you think the beast of fire is a different animal down here in Southern California?
Wow, this is a really good point. There are several different what we call fire regimes in California. And what works in the chaparral areas is a little bit differently than what works in the heavily forested areas, and differently in the coastal scrub and sageland areas. Not that the fires, fires still threaten homes, and the way the homes are threatened are similar, but the way we interact with fire, the way fire behaves, and the intensity of fire does change around based on the fire regimes. And as we, as a state, as we balance our environmental goals and our healthy ecosystem goals with our fire safety goals, we really need to recognize that it's different for different parts of the state.
So thank you, Fire Marshal Kate. Appreciate that insight. I mean, Chief Johnson, you have to deal with this stuff every single day.
He does.
The sort of different animal of fire down here in Southern California. You are in LA County, which is a giant, unwieldy county with a lot of gullies and culverts and brush. And what do you see as the tip of the spear in your job in terms of keeping our residents safe?
Well, the world that I exist in is brush clearance enforcement. And so I think our codes here in LA County exceed or a little bit exceed what's in the state. And I think if the people, homeowners, are able to clear their brush per the code, and we have inspectors that'll come out and work with community groups or individual homeowners to explain to them in detail in their particular situation. So we have general guidelines, the code that we go by, but each individual site is specific on how fire is going to affect them. And so if homeowners desire, we can go out and spec out exactly where the threat is coming from and how to mitigate those threats. Santa Monica's are particularly dangerous. Most of our clearance goes out to 200 feet. Again, the Santa Monica Mountains are a particularly hazardous area. And so in my world for brush clearance, that's what I'm mainly concerned with, is getting people to comply with the code.
And what do you find is the biggest source of resistance to that? Do people think it means you're gonna, when you show up on their property, they're gonna have all their trees cut down, or they're gonna lose, say, the little piece of vegetation they've got? Is it more just people being resistant to opening the door at all? What can we do better to build that sort of communal spirit to embrace what you guys are trying to do to make us safe at LA County Fire?
Well, certainly. And then again, every situation is different. So we have never advocated, the term brush clearance is a little misleading. So obviously we need to protect the environment. So the goal here is to, mitigate the threat by reducing the fuel load, thereby, reducing the fire intensity and giving that homeowner some space there, so our operational people can go in there and defend their property. So that defensible space is so important, and we can definitely provide that assistance to them in defining what is safe for them. So when you're talking about resistance, I think there's different levels of resistance, and some is, not being able to afford, a lot of people have fixed income, and so it is an expensive endeavor. The larger your property, the bigger the expense. But, there is ways, through these fire safe councils, there's a lot of grant opportunities to take advantage of. And of course, the State Fire Council, Fire Safe Council helps with that, and we can help with that. We have a staff available to go out and assist people in that area also. But ultimately, we have over 45,000 parcels that we inspect every year in LA County. And we literally have, it's about 2% that become non-compliant every year that we have to work with. So the majority of the people do clear, do take this serious, and we get a pretty good compliance with those people that recognize the situation. And those 2% that we work with, and only a small portion of that do we have to actually go in and do the clearance and enforcement. So we get pretty good participation in LA County overall.
So Chief, that 2%, we know when they're non-compliant, the rest of the community is at risk. So if you're a neighbor and you're doing everything you need to do, and you've been like Deb and cleared out all your brush and got your pavers in and managed your landscaping, you got your defensible space and you're ready to go, but that neighbor next door to you has a gully behind their house that they've never taken a look at, and they're pushing back. What can communities do to try to get collective action going? Are there numbers or hotlines to call? How do they sort of help encourage their neighbors and go neighbor to neighbor to prevent you guys from having to come out to the house and be the heavy?
Well, I think creation of these fire safe councils, or even local communities that get together and practice these fire safe practices is extremely helpful. So peer support is really the key. And
so knocking on that door.
So I think, but I think the creation of fire safe councils produces people like Beth who are now really have gone to classes, are really well informed, and they can spread the word out in the community far better than we can. So we're limited in the number of staff that we have, and we really don't want to do the enforcement process. We're forcing people. It's really better to educate people on what the real threat is, so they take active participation in all of this. So it's recognizing where they live and how to live within the environment, this hazardous environment that they're in.
So on that note, what's it take to start a fire safe council? Maybe Chief Fire Marshal Dargan. Fire Marshal Kate.
Yeah, that's fine. You know what? I'm gonna hack one of your things that you said, Senator. It takes a spark to create a fire. It just takes one person to start a fire safe council, and that one person, like Beth and her community, that one person who really takes on the champion role, is willing to go talk to the neighbors and start a small group of like-minded folks, and from there you take your small group, and this is, it is done like this every time. It's not like this is a top-down government, says we're going to do this. It is always starting from, one neighbor to another neighbor, a champion to a community. And once you've got, your core group, then you go out and you look for the other collaborators, whether it's an environmental group in your community, the local fire department, a champion within the fire department, someone from the business community, maybe somebody from the local utility. These are people who know each other or who work together or who feel like they are part of the community, and they come together. At the State Fire Safe Council website, we have an entire handbook that takes you through every step it takes to start a fire safe council. It is a template, it has forms, it has a suggested press release, the first meeting agenda, how to form a nonprofit, how to build collaboration. It is an ABC checklist on how to start a fire safe council, and it works because people are doing this all over the state.
So I know we're going to have in our chat, as well as on our Facebook link, a guide to all those resources. There are also grants available. We know we've been trying to get more state funding moving. Unfortunately, the legislature ended session this year without pushing through a $500 million wildfire resilience package. And in fact, we had a bond to bring to voters this November that I couldn't quite convince my colleagues all to get on board with. So unfortunately, we won't have a chance to vote on wildfire resilience this November. But as a community, I think we can all take our destiny into our own hands. And hopefully I can convince a few more of my colleagues that climate change is real and that wildfire resilience is really the key to the entire state's fiscal solvency, not just its public safety. But I did want to bring on camera for a minute. One of my best friends from growing up who got forced into a leadership role, whether or not he liked it, defending our community during the Woolsey fire. Keegan Gibbs, who managed to make it all the way out from, I think you're in Topanga now?
I'm in Malibu again.
You're back in Malibu.
Yeah,
okay, you're back home.
Yeah.
And your pops grew up on Doom Drive.
Yep, parents on Point Doom. Yep.
And they lost their place.
They lost their place. I was currently living in Topanga when Woolsey happened. Yeah.
I remember being in the parking lot at the elementary school, and your dad had stepped on a nail.
Oh yeah.
And we were trying to figure out how to get the guy a tetanus shot.
Right.
Because the urgent care center, all the power was down.
Right, I remember that.
Someone's trying to run a fuel convoy to get the
yeah.
generator back up and running. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
We've got to do this a better way.
Yeah.
But we were on our own out there on Point Doom during that fire, and that really changed you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you would have asked, my perspective about wildfire resiliency and community resiliency around wildfires directly after the fire, and I think this is most people's response post major fire disaster, is on response to a fire. Why wasn't there enough fire department? Why did the fire get so big? And that, when really the focus needs to be on preparation. And as much as we got a lot of media attention during the fire and post-fire around us just trying to help out the community, we're trying to turn that into focus into community resilience and community prep, as opposed to focusing again on the next fire on response.
You don't want to be in that position where you got to go out with garden hoses and trying to find a pool with your buddies and by the skin of your teeth fighting that way again. What have you done since?
Yeah, I mean, well, you don't need to be. You shouldn't need to be. If you have a well-hardened home, you should be able to live with a sense of security that you don't need a fire truck, and that fire truck can go somewhere else. And if you do stay around, you should be able to defend your home safely with just a bucket of water, ultimately, right? What we're working on right now is a continuation of what I learned from one of Beth's classes from the Fire Safe Council around the home ignition zone, is creating a certification program that certifies and financially incentivizes homeowners to reach a certain threshold of resilient homes. And then when they meet the resiliency standards, they get awarded through partnerships with grants, partnerships with insurance companies, partnerships through the state, and then also recognize some of the hardening standards that you helped push through the state.
And I do know there's a big hearing coming up actually next week with the state insurance commissioner.
Yes.
Who's been trying to convince our insurance companies to recognize the kind of things that Deb has done. And when they're out here non-renewing or canceling our insurance policies and saying, you're powerless, right, your fire insurance is gone, you say, well, wait, I hardened my home. Now, part of their argument is if you harden your home, that's not enough. We want to know that your neighbor did it, and that your neighbor's neighbor did it, and that the whole community is solid, because we know if one home catches, it becomes a liability for the whole community. But I did want to raise that because I think it's going to be important for people like you and folks like Deb to testify and let the state insurance commissioner know that they don't want to feel powerless in the face of insurance crisis or in the face of the next wildfire, that if they take action, they form a fire safe council, they take these hardening standards, that we expect the insurance companies to respond, and that they've got to get a little more detailed about how they manage their risk and recognize that civic action is actually a risk mitigation tool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to check in, Jeremy, are we getting anything online? You guys had any questions from the gallery there?
We do. And
or from Keegan's Instagram following?
We have some, and we've texted them to your phone.
Oh, and
they are texted right to your phone, and we have the questions ready.
All right. Hey, Keegan, thank you.
Yeah.
I hope I don't see you again this fire season in a fire.
No.
I hope I just see you like surfing.
Yes.
And to Richard too. Okay, so some questions. Do you think did Beth? Did you mind coming back? Just being here. If we had a few more questions. So Candace was wondering, is the mesh installed from the outside or the inside of the house?
It's a great question, Candace, and it doesn't matter. So if you can do it from the inside, it probably will look better because it will be in your attic where no one sees it. But if you have to do it from the outside because you can't get to the inside, that's fine too.
So either way, inside, outside, whatever you can access, just do it. Just one way or another, get the mesh.
Exactly.
Get the mesh. We're actually working on a program right now to try to get Home Depot and Lowe's and also some of the small hardware stores to put together a home hardening aisle so you actually know where to go. But just go online and you should be able to figure it out. Mesh. Another question about how I can help organize a fire safe council in my neighborhood. Did we get a link up for folks to go to the State Fire Safe Council?
We'll make a link available.
Okay, great. Well, so we'll make that available. But Beth, did you have any insight beyond what Fire Marshal Kate was adding in terms of what it takes to get it going? She talked about finding that next neighbor and building that crew and going through the guidance. But is there a lot of paperwork? Is this a headache of a process to get things started?
It's not a headache at all of a process. It is a community process. And indeed, if you send me an email, I'm happy to mentor you through the process. That's really my passion right now, is working with communities to get organized, to become much more fire prepared. So I'm happy to provide that.
So that's quite an offer, because I know that Beth mentored Deb, and as a result, she got through it. But if she's offering her services, I would highly recommend you take her up on it. And I know our friends out in Chatsworth Lake Manor, for instance, are looking at making some moves, and Old Agura's been trying to figure out how to get themselves on track. Topanga obviously is a hot zone, so they've been looking at the big one for years coming in.
And I've been working with communities in Pasadena and across the mountains out there. actually in West LA, in Beverly Glen, in Fryman Canyon. So I'm happy to work with anybody at this point. We all are in the same situation. Let's share the knowledge and make it easier for every community to get organized.
And I would just say, if you're tuning in and watching and you have a fire safe council in your community and you want us to come out or find your local legislator, I got friends over in Fryman Canyon or in Pasadena, go see Laura Friedman or Anthony Portantino or Ben Allen or Richard Bloom. We'll come to your neighborhood and try to shed some light on what your community can do. We don't want to leave you hanging and leave you alone. And we're going to keep fighting for more grant funding, but the people part is critical. So
it's critical. And in this time of COVID, where it's so hard to get community gatherings, we've actually created Zoom presentations, and we're happy to do a presentation in your community with our knowledge. And so there's a lot of opportunity.
Awesome.
Even though we can't really be close together.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could give you a hug. Mac is wondering what's California doing to mitigate the risk of wildfire long term. The governor today had to call the president to try to get our fire funding to deal with these last fires back on track. We don't want to be put in that position where we have to go call the president and beg him to think twice. We've got to get ahead of this. And unfortunately, we didn't get our climate resilience bond on the ballot. But I think it's going to take spending in advance to help harden our communities so that we don't have to spend all those extra resources fighting them on the back end. FEMA has this math, they talk a 1 to 7, where for every dollar you spend up front, you save 7 on the back end. I believe that we'll actually bankrupt the state of California if we don't get ahead of the curve here. And the communities like this in Malibu Lake and Agoura and Topanga and Pasadena, the WUI is coming closer and closer to everybody. If you don't think you're in a fire zone right now and you live in Encino, it's coming. Tarzana, it's coming. You live in Azusa, out in where Chief Johnson is, in West Covina. Anywhere where there's a hillside or that gully or that culverts that's not maintained, with 100-mile-an-hour winds in this era of climate change, everybody is vulnerable. So I'm really hoping we can push some important legislation next year and get a bond on the ballot. There's a new bill that was passed by Assemblymember Friedman and I. She's a partner with me on all these issues around looking at this 0 to 5 feet of defensible space as an ember-resistant zone and updating our building code so that new homes are built to last. But a lot of those existing homes, homeowners are in them. They find themselves in a tight spot. The insurance industry is saying, we're going to bail on you. And they may not think they've got the money or the manpower, the woman power to deal with this stuff. And we're here to just say, we do. And we're here to help you all the way. Lastly, let's find this final question here. And thank you, by the way, to Megan Meckelberg on my team, who's back in the studio, like the quiet one with the headpiece, saying, camera 3, camera 4. And to Jeremy Wolf, who worked his tail off to make this happen. I've been through way too many fires with him. Jeremy, come out and say hi to everyone just real quick, if you don't mind. He didn't sign up to work a camera. He's actually an incredible community organizer and a strategist, but thanks for working overtime here. He won't talk. He's in, it's okay. Okay, last question before we wrap up here and let you guys get on with your weekend. What organizations should I look into for online resources about home hardening? So cafiresafecouncil.org is one.
And I'm going to come back on the screen to talk about a brand new website, defensiblespace.org. Once again, defensiblespace.org.
Awesome.
This is the state-of-the-art website. It just launched 2 weeks ago, and hopefully it will answer every question you could possibly have. There is a lot of information online, and once you start getting into it, you'll find your way through.
Thank you for that. So defensiblespace.org, and we'll be coming back to you next week. I believe it's Tuesday, Jeremy?
Tuesday the 20th.
Tuesday the 20th.
4 o'clock.
At 4 o'clock. We're coming back to do another one of these hardening workshops. But it's going to be with a real focus on community and volunteering. Even if you're not that homeowner in the WUI, if you're not Deb who has to do that leaf blowing every day, or if someone like Deb can't take care of that work, how can you step up and help? Well, it turns out the state of California is about to launch a very exciting program in Southern California called the California Climate Action Corps. And right now you can apply for a $20,000 a year grant to commit yourself to 1,200 hours of service through AmeriCorps and a partnership with Cal Volunteers to step up and join the Fire Corps in your community. So we're going to be bringing the governor's chief service officer, Josh Friday, down to good old Los Angeles, making his way from Sacramento, and take a look at another slice of the WUI, another look at risk, but a new lens to take power back and not let climate change force us into a life of loss. So I'm very excited about that. And Deb, if you don't mind, I know you're shy, but you weren't shy today and you were brave, but you were brave most of all back those years ago. And I just want to thank you for having us to your home. And don't think you guys can come blow her leaves or do anything like that, because she's got this one handled. But sincerely appreciate you stepping up and helping organize Malibu Lake.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's an honor. Without any further ado, no more questions coming in. Hey, Chief Johnson, salute to you, sir. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to help us get some education today, but also doing that work every single day to make our brush clearance happen. And hopefully when you don't have to show up, it's a good day. And Fire Marshal Kate, you've been such a resource to us in the legislature, but also to communities all around the state of California. And when you said thousands of fire safe councils all across the state, we're going to take you up on that. So let's make something happen here, folks, and we'll make it through this fire season again. Take care.
Thank you, Senator.